Larry moved to his cousin's house in North Carolina for college. He was starting his master's in artificial intelligence. He felt excited, hopeful, ready for a new beginning. But something dark was waiting for him, something that would change his life forever. When Larry arrived, his cousin smiled and said, "You'll be staying in the basement. It's empty, just needs a little cleaning." The basement, it was cold, dark, silent. A smell of old wet clothes and something rotten hung in the air. The walls were cracked and wet, leaking in some corners. Spider webs hung low from the ceiling. The wooden stairs groaned with every step, almost like they were whispering warnings. "No one's been in here for over 2 years," his cousin said casually. Larry and his cousin spent the day cleaning the place. They threw out old furniture, swept the dust, and even painted the walls. Soft carpets were placed on the cold floor. A bed was set up in one corner. Next to the bed stood an old mirror, spotted with black marks. It looked like it had seen too much. By evening, the basement looked better. It looked livable. But that night, everything changed. After dinner, Larry went downstairs to sleep. Before lying down, he wanted to check his books for class. The room was dim, lit only by a small fairy light above the table and a few red LED strips along the wall. The red glow made the room look strange, almost evil. Suddenly, the vase on the table shook. Just a little. Larry paused. Maybe it's nothing, he thought, but then it shook again, this time harder. The air around him felt heavy, like someone was breathing near his ear. Then, crash! The vase fell and shattered into pieces. The sound echoed like a scream. Larry jumped up, heart pounding. He bent down to clean it, but his eyes widened in shock. The broken pieces were floating, slowly, gently, rising into the air like smoke. He looked at his hand. It was hurting, burning. His face felt wet, like blood was pouring out. He ran to the mirror in panic, but there was no blood, no wounds, nothing. "I'm just tired. I must be seeing things," he whispered, trying to calm his breath. He turned off the lights and lay in bed, eyes closed, mind racing. But then, an itching feeling started on his face. He turned to the mirror beside his bed. What he saw made his heart stop. His face was full of deep red cuts, like someone had sliced him with a knife again and again. Blood. Everywhere. He screamed and jumped from the bed. He ran to the bathroom upstairs. There, under the bathroom light, in the mirror, his face was completely normal. No cuts. No blood. He stood still, terrified. Something was wrong. He went back downstairs, slowly, nervously. He tried to sleep again. That's when he heard it, a soft humming, like a woman singing a lullaby. But it wasn't sweet. It was cold, distant, hollow. The sound grew louder. Larry tried to move, but he couldn't. His arms and legs were stuck. His whole body was frozen in place. The red lights on the wall began to flicker fast. He turned his eyes toward the mirror and saw it. A black, shadowy figure was holding his legs. Larry wanted to scream, but no sound came out. His chest was tight. His heart beat like a drum. Then, the sound of someone coming down the stairs. Step by step, getting closer. "Help! Help! Cousin!" Larry shouted, but his voice was weak. No one came. The sound of the footsteps grew louder. Larry tried to crawl. He dragged his body toward the stairs. Suddenly, something grabbed his neck. He was lifted into the air. He looked at the mirror in horror. What he saw made his blood turn cold. It was him, but with no face. Just smooth skin, no eyes, no mouth, no nose. A faceless clone of himself, holding him up. The room began to shake. Books flew off the shelf. The lights blinked madly. Larry's arms twisted unnaturally. His legs bent at awful angles. His mouth opened to scream, but still no sound came. And then, silence. His body dropped to the floor with a dull, lifeless thud. The next morning, his cousin came downstairs to check on him. What he saw made him scream. Larry's body was lying on the floor, twisted, broken, dead. The cousin called the police. Soon the basement was sealed. The house became quiet. Later, people found out that a murder had happened in that basement many years ago. An innocent man was tortured and killed. Since then, the house had been cursed. The basement door was never opened again. The house still stands, but no one dares to live there anymore. Laura and her husband had rented a new house under a quiet forest to enjoy the summer, near the peaceful green nature. They were so happy. Their old dream had finally come true. The house was the only one hidden deep inside the woods. It looked beautiful, almost like a luxury cabin. From the outside, it was modern and shiny. From the inside, it had everything, all the latest things a modern home should have. But there was one strange thing. The house was renewed recently, but the basement was not. On the back side of the house, there was an old rusty metal door that led to an underground basement. The door looked completely different from the rest of the house. It didn't feel right, almost like it didn't belong there. The owner had warned them very clearly, never open the basement door. But after 2 peaceful days of exploring the forest and relaxing in their new home, curiosity took over. They couldn't stop thinking about the basement. They shouldn't have done it. It was their biggest mistake. Laura's husband grabbed an axe. With heavy breaths, he hit the lock again and again, until finally, clang! The lock broke. The door creaked open slowly with a long metal groan. Behind it, a cold, narrow staircase disappeared deep into the ground. The steps were made of marble, but they were wet, too wet, as if someone had just cleaned them. They looked at each other, both holding torches, hearts beating fast. Then they started going down. As they descended, the smell of damp water grew stronger. It was thick, almost choking. Just then, bang! The door behind them slammed shut with a terrifying noise. Laura gasped. Her husband flinched. But instead of turning back, they kept going down. The silence was deep. The only sound was the soft echo of their footsteps. The stairs seemed to go on forever, almost like a trap. Laura whispered, "This doesn't feel like a basement. It feels like some old underground military decision room." Her husband laughed nervously. "Yeah, I was thinking the same." They tried to smile, but the air around them was getting colder, heavier. Finally, they reached the bottom. What they saw next made their blood freeze. It was a huge underground hall filled with ancient torture devices, like the ones used in dark times of history. There were iron cages, chains, and rusty tools made to hurt and punish people, like the Iron Maiden, stretching tables, and spiked chairs. Blood was everywhere. Some of it was still fresh. Skulls lay in the corners. Bones cracked under their feet. The smell of death was in the air. Fear crawled through their bodies like insects under the skin. As they stepped deeper into the hall, they saw something even worse: a big metal shock machine and a current controller. Thick black wires were connected to chairs with straps made to hold someone down. On one side of the hall, there were 8 to 10 chairs arranged neatly. In the middle was a large glass panel, thick and shiny like a mirror. A table stood in front with wine glasses and food boxes, as if a dinner had just ended. Laura whispered, Who eats here?" They slowly moved forward and found more torture tables. Each one had blood stains, scratch marks, and sharp tools beside them. The air was filled with the sound of buzzing, low vibrations, almost like whispering. Then, clang! A large axe suddenly dropped from the ceiling right in the middle of the room. The sound echoed through the hall like a scream. Both of them jumped in terror. Laura's husband grabbed her hand. "We need to leave. Now!" They ran back to the staircase, hearts pounding, breathing hard. But when they reached the top, the door was locked. They banged on it, screaming for help. Laura cried. Her husband punched the door again and again, but it was no use. Then, click. All the lights in the basement turned on by themselves. Bright, cold, unnatural. They froze. Suddenly, they saw 2 young girls appear from the shadows. Pale faces, empty eyes. They didn't speak. They just started cleaning the sofas and the table, calmly as if getting ready for guests. Laura and her husband stood there speechless. "What is happening?" she whispered. They looked at each other, slowly turning their heads, and in that silent moment, their hearts sank. They understood. A new show was about to begin, and this time, they were the main event. Jane was lying on her mattress when the door knocked. "Jane, can you open it?" her mother called out from the kitchen. Jane got up, still looking at her phone, and walked toward the door lazily. She opened it and froze. An old woman stood in front of her. Her posture was bent, her skin full of deep wrinkles. Her clothes were torn and dirty. She held a damaged wooden stick, and her eyes were dark, almost empty. "I haven't eaten in days," the old woman whispered. "Do you have something to eat?" Jane felt a little uncomfortable, but also sad. She nodded and said, "Wait here." She brought some bread and a bottle of juice from the kitchen and handed them to her. The woman's eyes sparkled with happiness. She smiled with her broken teeth and said, "You are kind. For this kindness, take this." She handed Jane a beautiful doll, dressed in a red gown with curly black hair and glassy eyes that felt too real. Jane shook her head. "No, thank you. I don't need it." But the woman pushed it into her hands and said something strange. "I'm sorry." Jane was confused. "Sorry for what?" But the old woman turned and walked away, slowly disappearing into the night. Jane took the doll and placed it in a basket in the basement, not thinking much about it. A few days passed. One cold night, Jane's mother was preparing for winter. She needed a plastic sheet to cover the windows, and it was kept in the basement. She opened the basement door and heard soft laughter coming from the darkness. She paused. Did I just imagine that? She took a deep breath and stepped down. The wooden stairs creaked. The air was heavy and cold. A strange, rotten smell filled the basement. She switched on the light. It flickered weakly. Shadows danced on the walls. "Maybe rats came in," she whispered, trying to stay calm. She picked up the sheet and turned to go upstairs, but suddenly, a deep, evil growl echoed behind her. Her heart started beating wildly. She gasped and turned around. No one was there. Panicking, she ran up the stairs, but just as she reached the top, bang! The door slammed shut right on her face. She screamed as her head hit the wood, and she collapsed unconscious. 15 minutes later, Jane came downstairs and saw her mother lying there. "Mom! Mom!" she cried. She called an ambulance and they took her to the hospital. But after that night, her mother changed. She became angry, rude, and cold. The kind and loving mother Jane knew was gone. One night, Jane was walking through the hallway to get a glass of water. She noticed something strange. The basement door was open, just a little, and there was a sound coming from inside. Whispers, two voices, like they were gossiping. Jane slowly walked to the door and peeked in. Her eyes widened in shock. It was her mother and sitting in the basement, talking to the doll. Jane felt chills crawl down her back. Her body froze. She leaned closer. And then, the doll turned its head. Its glass eyes stared at Jane. A creepy smile appeared on its face. Suddenly, whoosh! The doll flew toward her at high speed like a bullet. Jane screamed and slammed the door shut. She fell backward, breathing fast, heart racing, hands shaking. "What was that? What's happening to my family?" Just then, her mother walked down the hall from behind. "Jane, are you okay? Why are you sitting on the floor?" Jane looked at her mother. She was wearing the same clothes, but something about her felt wrong. She looked calm, too calm, like nothing had happened. Jane didn't say a word. She just nodded and slowly got up. She locked the basement door and went to her room, terrified. Every night after that, when she walked past the basement, she could hear them, her mother and the doll, whispers, laughs, humming. One morning, her mom asked her, "Jane, go to the basement and bring the ice cleaner." Jane's stomach twisted. Her heart sank. I'm going to the market. I'll bring it later," she said, avoiding eye contact. She had enough. She needed answers. While walking to the market, Jane saw a familiar face. The same old woman was sitting by the roadside, wrapped in an old blanket. Jane walked up to her and sat down. "You said sorry that day. Why?" she asked. The woman didn't reply. "I said, why the heck did you say sorry that day?" Jane shouted, her eyes full of tears. The woman looked up. Her face was full of sadness. "The doll is cursed," she said quietly. "It destroys the life of whoever owns it." Jane's heart skipped a beat. "What? Then why did you give it to me?" The woman started crying. "I had a beautiful family, a loving husband, a good life. Someone gave me that doll. I didn't believe in such things. But then, it destroyed everything. my family, my home, my life. I thought, maybe if I passed it on, I'd be free. Jane stood up in shock, her body frozen. She ran home, fast, but when she reached her street, she stopped. Her house was on fire. Flames rose into the sky. Black smoke filled the air. People screamed. Firefighters tried to stop the fire. But Jane, she just fell to her knees, eyes full of tears, heart full of pain, watching everything burn. She sat there in the middle of the road, not blinking, not speaking. And then, she looked to her right, under the big tree near the house. The doll was sitting there, smiling, watching her, alive.